Welcome. This video is documenting the prediction that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel will slip and fall and severely injure his head on November 27th, 2025, Thanksgiving Day. And it is predicted that the news of this will be first reported on November 28th, 2025, Black Friday. The post date on the social media platform that you are watching this video on proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Hello, welcome. This video is predicting that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel will slip and fall and severely injure his head on November 27th, 2025, Thanksgiving Day. And it is predicted that the following day, the news of this will be reported for the first time on November 28th, Black Friday. And it is predicted in this video that Michelle Obama and Barack Obama will return to the White House on January 20th, 2029. I'll explain. As we can see here, this email was composed on November 24th, and so this proves this is being predicted, or this video is being made ahead of time, ahead of the prediction. November 27th is the date of the prediction. We can see here that this email, according to this here, was composed an hour ago. And that's because the prophetic sign I'll be talking about to begin with occurred today on the 24th of November. Okay, so that's what God is doing here. He's revealing a sign 3 days before the prediction that confirms the analysis for the prediction 3 days later. I'll explain. The death of the last survivor, and by the way, this video is very important, as they all are, of course. Otherwise, God wouldn't be providing these stories. And let me just add here that this is how it works. It is through the interconnected signs that God is able to tell stories. In other words, none of God's prophetic signs can be properly or fully understood without their context and connections with the other prophetic signs. And this is something that is not really appreciated by most quote-unquote watchers, people that are interested in God's signs. And it is through these stories that God is able to communicate extremely important information and knowledge. And God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. The death of the last survivor of the Tulsa race massacre at the age of 111 was announced on November 24th. 111 is the 36th semi-prime number. A semi-prime number is a number that is only divisible by two other prime numbers, which God uses, semi-prime numbers. And 36 in God's signs hints at the number 666, the number associated with the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. This is because 36 is 6 times 6, and it is also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, all the way up to 36, is equal to 666. Okay, so in other words, this age is Antichrist symbolism. 111 years old. This is a typo. It's not the last survivor. The last one now, with the death of this person, is also 111 years old. The death of this person was the oldest survivor. So God uses extremes or records for prophetic signs in general. So we have the oldest survivor of the Tulsa race massacre, leaving one more survivor who was also 111 years old. Okay, this, the date of the announced death, because I don't know for sure what date the death was, but the mayor of Tulsa announced the death on this date, which makes it the date to observe for God's purposes for his prophetic connections. And so this date was exactly 401 months after the select team beat Michael Jordan, number 23, and the U.S. Olympic Dream Team. Now, why is this relevant? Well, 3 days, yeah. Okay, so I'm jumping ahead, might as well get to it. This 1 plus 1, this 111 years hints at adding 1 plus 1 plus 1 days to November 24th to get us November 27th. The date it's predicted that Paul Simon will slip and fall and injure his head. And I'll explain that more later. But I just realized now, as I am speaking, that this date, November 24th, is also 1 plus 1 plus 1 days after another prophetic sign, which was the death of Rodney Rogers, a member of the select team that beat the Dream Team. This is a big event in basketball history because back in the day, 1992, professional basketball players were not allowed to participate in the Olympics. But that rule changed, and then we had the Dream Team formulated. And prior to the Olympics, they practiced with the select team, which was the all-stars, if you will, of college basketball. And so when they first got together, they had a scrimmage. They had a basketball game. And the select team very famously beat the Dream Team in this scrimmage, which had an effect on the Dream Team themselves to motivate them to really get it together for the Olympics. Okay, and recently, this year even, there was a documentary released on, I think, HBO about how the day the select team beat the Dream Team. So it's very a big milestone in basketball history here. Now, the reason why this is Antichrist is because the Dream Team involved Michael Jordan, who played for Chicago, which is where the Antichrist is from, who is also a lover of basketball. He is the basketball president, Barack Obama. For example, he had at the White House installed a basketball court. He built a basketball court at the White House. I think what he did is he transformed the tennis court into a basketball court. But anyway, he wore number 23 in high school, the same number that Michael Jordan wore. And Michael Jordan is the GOAT, greatest of all time, and God is using this to hint at the GOAT Antichrist. And what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to play a clip that I made years ago regarding explaining the connection between Obama and Michael Jordan. And it's very interesting, and I haven't played it much. I hadn't played it in a while until I put it into the video yesterday. So I'm going to put it into this video one more time here. Feel free to skip ahead a couple of minutes if you've already seen it in the other video, and I'll be right back. God uses the number 23 to reveal the identity of the Antichrist, the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school. In the Old Testament in the Bible, it is described how 2 goats were used on the Day of Atonement in the ritual on the Temple Mount. In Bible prophecy, there are 2 antichrists, and in Bible prophecy, it is said that the Antichrist will rule the Temple Mount during the end times period. And the Antichrist will be vanquished from the Temple Mount at the return of Lord Jesus Christ on the Day of Atonement in 2024. Goat is Antichrist symbolism. Goat stands for greatest of all time. And this is why the two GOATs of basketball wore jersey number 23, Michael Jordan and LeBron James. The GOAT of basketball, Michael Jordan, played for Chicago, and the GOAT Antichrist, the basketball president, is from Chicago. LeBron James is famous for being from Cleveland and having played for Cleveland and having won the NBA Finals championship for Cleveland, breaking the supposed Cleveland sports curse, which is Antichrist King symbolism, which is why LeBron James goes by the nickname King James. And this was used to point to the president Grover Cleveland, who was the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, skipping the 23rd presidency, just like the Antichrist will serve non-consecutive terms, having skipped the 45th presidency. In God's true big picture of end times signs, patterns, and connections, the number 9 is the most important number, as from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment, and the number 23 is the 9th prime number, and the number 45 is the 9th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 9th row is 45. This is why Michael Jordan, in the exact middle of his career, after having won 3 NBA titles and before winning his other 3 NBA titles, retired briefly, and when he returned, wore jersey number 45 for coincidentally 23 games. And it is why Michael Jordan, in his last game as a Chicago Bull, another city God uses to point to the Antichrist, who is also from Chicago, scored 45 points against the team from the 45th state. Like Michael Jordan, LeBron James also played in Cleveland, then famously left Cleveland in much controversy, and then returned again to play a second time in Cleveland in order to win the championship for Cleveland and break the Cleveland sports curse, which symbolizes the Antichrist curse of Barack Obama when he will return to the White House for his second presidency. In other words, the hiatus in the middle of Michael Jordan's career in Chicago and the hiatus in the middle of LeBron James's career in Cleveland hint at the hiatus of Barack Obama skipping the 45th presidency and returning to the White House for a second presidency. It will be his third term, which is why Michael Jordan won 3 championships and then briefly retired before returning a second time to win 3 more championships. God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together in order to confirm the signs and connections and to reveal the identity of the Antichrist, the basketball president that wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school and became president in 2009, and will become the president again in 2023. From the Bible, the numbers 9 and 23 both symbolize judgment, and the number 23 is the 9th prime number. The only grandfather-grandson presidents were the 9th and 23rd presidents, William and Benjamin Harrison. The 9th president, William Harrison, died on the calendar date April 4th, 44, which hints at the 44th president. Harrison died exactly 1 month after his inauguration. The name Harrison hints at Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash due to a bird strike and lightning and turbulence in St. Louis. And the Antichrist Barack Obama will rise to power and become president again through her replacement, which is what is hinted at with the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, President Grover Cleveland, who skipped the presidency of Benjamin Harrison. The 23rd president, which is why LeBron James, who played for Cleveland, wore jersey number 23. Michelle Obama will first replace Kamala Harris, and then Barack will replace Michelle. Michelle is the feminine version of Michael, which is the reason for the name Michael in the name Michael Jordan. In the Bible, the Hebrews crossed the Jordan River into the Promised Land. Barack Obama's famous autobiography is named A Promised Land. Obama the Antichrist will promise the world a new world order utopia. A goat is Antichrist symbolism. The greatest of all time, the GOAT of basketball, Michael Jordan, wore jersey number 23 and jersey number 9 when he played for the U.S. Olympic Dream Team, a team that beat their opponents by an average of 44 points per game, which hints at the 44th president, GOAT Antichrist, that wore jersey number 23 and became president in 2009. If you have not already watched the Michael Jordan prophecy video on this channel, the Michael Jordan prophecy video is an essential video for foundational understanding of how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. Now, the mark of the Antichrist alters a person's 23 pairs of chromosomes. The number 22 in God's signs symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist. Why is that? Well, the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist is described in the book of Ezekiel in the Bible, and it would have been a Tav mark, and the Tav letter in the Hebrew alphabet is the last and 22nd letter of the alphabet. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the last and 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Also, the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, and chromosomes come in pairs, and each chromosome has 2 arms, and so 2 and 2, 22. Now, God has used this number before, not just in terms of a number, but in an actual sign, which was the exodus from Montreal to Toronto when the minority was persecuted, which is symbolic of the persecution through an enacted law in Quebec. Language laws. This was supposedly Western culture, Western civilization, but we had this oppressive minority law be passed and still exists to this day because of the double standards in Canada that are, anyway. So the law had the Anglo-speaking people flee Montreal. Montreal is a place that God uses in general for prophetic signs because its meaning in French, Mount Royal, which hints at the Temple Mount, on which the King of Kings, Lord Jesus Christ, will dwell on in the Messianic age, in the 1,000 years of peace, in a few years from now, beginning a few years from now. And anyway, the highway is the King's Highway, which makes it more prophetic because the Israelites fled the king after oppressive minority laws, the king of Egypt. So it's the King's Highway, but it's also Highway 401. It took me a while, though, after recognizing the King's Highway being prophetic, and 400 because the Israelites fled the king of Egypt after being afflicted for 400 years. But I never really appreciated why 401. I mean, I'm from the region originally, and so this is like the big highway. It's the equivalent of the interstate highway between U.S. cities. It's the big highway in Canada, and it connects Montreal to Toronto, and it's 401. But why 401? Well, anyway, I finally figured it out. It's because 401 is the 22nd superprime number. In other words, 401 is the 79th prime number, and 79 is the 22nd prime number. And again, that symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist. And of course, what we're talking about here, symbolically, is the persecution of the minority who refused to take the thing. You know what I'm talking about. And we've already experienced this, the persecution of those who refuse to take the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist. And it wasn't a precursor. It was the mark of the Antichrist, but there'll be another round, if you will, of the mark of the Antichrist. But don't be mistaken. It was the mark of the Antichrist. And those who took it are going to hell, including the majority of quote-unquote Christians that took it. And I know far better than you the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. And it is to prove the things that I am saying in this video, and especially and primarily the controversial things that I am saying in this video. and these videos. And to not appreciate this is to miss entirely the point of this prediction from God and this video and video channel. You are wasting your time. You might as well turn the video off now, because I am here to tell you that the debate is over when the prediction for Paul Simon on November 27th comes to pass. There's no more discussion at all regarding whether or not that thing was the mark of the Antichrist. Okay, now the commonly held objections that people have, I answer in the snakebite video on this channel, but make no mistake, you are incorrect when the prediction comes to pass. Okay? Now, it doesn't need a supposed new thing to go with it, such as an additional technology or false form of religious worship. For those who are wise, it did come with a false form of religious worship, and it does not need a supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians already have taken the mark of the Antichrist is that it is in fact judgment for this particular doctrine that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. Dispensationalism is the package in which the free grace and cheap grace comes in, otherwise known as once saved, always saved. And its close cousin, sovereign grace, reformed theology, which comes in the package of Calvinism and the nonsense that is tulip, etc. And that is the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, and I don't care to explain to you at this moment how I know this through God's big picture of science. But make no mistake, the reason for this prediction is to prove what I have just said. Case closed. That is the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. Nicolaitan also goes beyond that, though, but specifically the doctrine is that, but it also refers to pastors, priests, bishops, popes, etc., because the word Nicolaitan is a cognate of Greek, in Greek, that means ruling over the laity. And so Jesus mentions twice how he hates this Nicolaitan doctrine in the book of Revelation, meant for our time. And we are being told, supposedly by these so-called pastors, well, we really don't know what he was actually referring to. It's kind of confusing. So, what to do? That's absurd, of course, because why would Jesus have mentioned it for our time specifically if it were not for any good reason? But furthermore, it seems to be very important when you read what is being said around it. He's coming to make war on the Nicolaitans and those that follow them, the sycophants that follow the Nicolaitans, the alpha males that get up on stage and speak for 45 minutes and get paid. Something that Paul and Jesus forbid. And yes, when you take the passages that they use, that Paul wrote, out of context, yes, you can make the case. But when you don't take them out of context, it's clear that Paul was not talking about what they're doing. And if anything, he was talking about food, not money. Now, so anyway, Jesus forbid teachers. And that includes pastors. And that's why those that followed pastors and their guidance on whether or not the thing was the mark of the Antichrist or not suffered because of it. You got what you deserved. Jesus told you to not follow them. Now it is more dangerous than ever to follow a pastor. The socialist dictators that claim to have a monopoly 100% on information, for example. Like, I wouldn't be able to tell you this sort of thing if I were your Christian brother inside that so-called church that you go to. Right? And so much for what Paul said when he said, if someone, while someone is speaking, another person has something to say, is inspired to say something, let the person who's speaking be silent. But if you were ever to do that today in a church, well, you would be escorted out of the church immediately and asked never to return. Anyway. So nowhere in the Bible does it say one cannot repent after having taken the mark of the Antichrist. Another thing that evangelicals don't have correct. Because why? Well, they follow the culture that's passed down to them through pastors. Anyway, and the assorted false doctrines, such as Reformed theology. So what I was getting at here is that we have this Tulsa race massacre, okay? And this is a sign from God, this death of the oldest survivor. This person's age, her age, hints at this 666 number. So we're getting at the Antichrist here. The Antichrist is the basketball president. This occurred with a prophetic mark of the Antichrist number of months to the select team, which hints at the rapture, the select team, right? And the dream team is prophetic here too. Now, the dream team starred Michael Jordan, who with the team wore number 29. Actually, that was mentioned in the clip that I just played, because God pairs 9, 23, and 44. The dream team also outscored their opponents in the Olympics by an average of 44 points. That's a classic pairing of 9, 23, and 44. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And if we think about it, one simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9, 23, and 44. And I know these are the numbers because I have been studying his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections from morning until night for more than full-time hours for more than 7 years. That said, I realized that this was the case very early on, and that was obviously required because they are the building blocks of God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, the pairings of 9, 23, and 44. Okay, so I just recently learned, actually a couple days ago, that the number of teammates Michael Jordan had in his 6 championship wins was 44. That's right. He had 44 other teammates during his 6 championships seasons. Okay, now, why is the Dream Team relevant to the Tulsa Race Massacre? Well, one of the iconic things, arguably probably the most famous thing in the, location in the Tulsa Race Massacre, which was the burning of this area of Tulsa nicknamed Black Wall Street. So back in the 1920s when this happened, this area of Tulsa was one of the most prosperous areas in the whole country for black people. And so it was nicknamed Black Wall Street. It was the Greenwood District. It's a true name, but it was nicknamed the Black Wall Street. There was black ownership of many businesses and professionals, and so it was a prosperous area. Booker T. Washington, from what I read, gave the name Glenwood District to, that's where the name comes from. So it's a very famous area. It was a very famous area, and it was burned down. And there was an exodus, which is, partly what I was getting at here with the exodus of the Israelites after 400 years, right? So there was also an exodus after the burning, okay? So many people died. It was a massacre, but it was also the burning of the district. And one of the significant cultural landmarks to be destroyed was the Dreamland Theater. And that's what is a second witness to this connection to the Dream Team, which confirms this connection, which confirms that we're talking about the Antichrist here. And if we are talking about the Antichrist, we can reasonably infer that with the Antichrist will come a massacre. And this massacre will be a form of genocide, because that's what a race massacre is. It's one group slaughtering another group. Okay, and for those that know, or for those that don't know, we are currently at this time in the latter stages of a massacre, a genocide. You can look it up online. There's what's called the 10 stages of genocide. And we are in the mid to latter stages of the genocide. And that was definitely the case during the CVD disease period of time. That's the truth about what was going on there. It was a beginning, if you will, of a coming genocide that will be led by the Antichrist. Now, when the Antichrist comes to power, as Bible prophecy says, he is handed the system, the Antichrist system. He doesn't create it. It's already been established. He just takes over the lead. He becomes the leader of the movement. But the movement is already underway. So in other words, it's not Barack Obama's movement, right? It's the movement of the left, for which he is the leader. Okay? All right, and so that's what's coming, but it'll be a politicide. Okay? It's a form of genocide. When the left finishes what they want to do, which is destroy their arch enemies, true conservatives and true Christians, which they have deemed to be evil and unworthy of being citizens, which is what, and that'll be proven to them in their own minds when these deplorables, as Hillary Clinton put it, refuse to take the mark of the Antichrist, which will serve to segregate them, which is what is hinted at with the race massacre, because back at that time, in the 1920s and before that, various cities were enacting segregation laws in the South. And for example, there was a law, I believe, in Tulsa, where you couldn't live on a block that had 3/4 of the other person of the opposite race. That law was struck down by the Supreme Court, from what I recall reading. And so, anyway, what we have though is this theme of segregation. Currently, what's being hinted at with the rounding up with ICE of illegal aliens, that's a prelude, and the system is being built unknowingly by conservatives and Trump, and I'm not criticizing it at all, but the system is being built for what will be taken over when the left gets back in power, and for example, the Alligator Alcatraz, etc., these camps in which illegals are being housed, and the infrastructure, in other words, will all be turned over to use it to put conservatives and Christians into their internment camps, etc., and the ability to round up people. The ability to round up people is going to escalate when the economy tanks, because the Americans, and rightfully so, won't tolerate illegals taking their jobs when jobs are scarce. And that's why the Antichrist, spirit of Antichrist in the left, opened the borders and allowed millions of people in during the Biden years, is to create this coming chaos, which, like I'm saying now, you can see it for what it really is going on. It's a prelude. It's a setup. The conservatives are building the infrastructure for their own demise, because the left is going to take that infrastructure of rounding people up. But anyway, the rounding up of people is going to escalate when people will have to identify whether they're an American citizen or not to be able to be employed. Well, that same infrastructure that's coming regarding that will be used to monitor and keep tabs on who has and hasn't taken the mark, the thing, for the upcoming so-called PAN ends of the demic. Okay? So, yeah, so I'll tell you what's ultimately going to happen. There will be digital currency, and that will restrict people from buying and selling food, which will become scarce. There will be a food shortage, which Barack Obama will take complete control over the food supply. when the food becomes rationed. And only those good citizens who take the mark will be able to buy and sell food, as Bible prophecy says. But that will be enforced through digital programmable currency. So you'll only be able to spend the money, if you haven't taken it, on anything but food. See what I'm saying? Okay, so anyway, let's continue on here. That's the reason for the dreamland. So the select team, by the way, are those who don't take the mark of the Antichrist, that are rescued from the persecution that is the mark of the Antichrist in the rapture. And so that's why the victory of the select team here over this team that symbolizes the Antichrist through Michael Jordan. But this dream team defeat by the select team connects profoundly to the Dreamland Theater through the death of the oldest survivor. Now, actually, one more thing. The theme of oldest survivor, because God could have made it the last survivor. So why did he make it the oldest survivor? Well, it could be a couple of things or both. But one, God still has a prophetic sign in store for the other person that's still alive. But two, oldest is part of this theme of the mark of the Antichrist. Because the mark of the Antichrist in the future will promise people immortality and age reversal through transhumanism technology. All right? That's why God's, using here in this obvious Antichrist, mark of the Antichrist connection, the oldest survivor at this incredible age of 111, which hints at the incredible ages that people will be promised that they'll be able to live, and immortality ultimately without God, which is the same lie as the first lie of the age with the serpent in the garden, who told Eve that she shall surely not die. Okay? I just noticed something. We have this 111 years connecting with player number 23. That gives us an 11 and 23. The 1123rd number, 188 is the 188th prime number is 1123. And H188 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance is the word for woe, exclamation mark, used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. Okay. All right, now Oklahoma hints at Obama, right? That's quite obvious, right? They rhyme. And this isn't the only example. There's so many examples, actually. Alabama, Okinawa, Oklahoma. I mean, there's many examples. So, Oklahoma hints at Obama. It's the 46th state. 46 is the 4 times 4th triangular number, which hints at the 44th president, Obama. Oklahoma was the refuge for Native Indians from the southeast, especially the southeast. They were taken, their land was taken, and they were given land in Oklahoma, long story short. But that also hints at the slaughter of the Native Indians in history. And that hints in turn at the Tulsa massacre, which hints at the coming genocide. Okay, so this is Oklahoma we're talking about here. The Tulsa massacre occurred in Oklahoma, which, as I've now explained, is symbolic of genocide because of this being the last place that the Native Indians were put and promised that they'd be able to live there peacefully without the federal government, and it would not be made into a state, but then it was. Okay, so Oklahoma symbolizes the Native Indian issue, which was a slaughter and a genocide, and it's also where the Tulsa massacre was, which was a segregation massacre genocide, and Oklahoma hints at Obama. So again, that's what God is communicating. That under Obama, there will be a genocide in America, a politicide. of true conservatives and true Christians, just as Bible prophecy says. Okay, now this date of the announcement by the mayor of Tulsa of the death of the oldest survivor of the Tulsa race massacre is 1,153 days before the return of Barack Obama to the White House, the predicted return, January 20th, 2029. This is 1,153 is the 191st prime number. God uses in his signs the number 191 to hint at 9/11 and Revelation 9/11. In fact, the events of 9/11 in themselves pointed to Revelation 9/11, which I explain in the other videos. So that's making this relevant because, as I've just explained now, how this all connects to the mark of the Antichrist, and that's what's being described in Revelation 9:11. Specifically, Revelation 9:11 speaks of the King Apollyon, the leader of the demons rising from the bottomless pit. But to read that prophecy properly is to understand that these demons will demonically possess people who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, which is why, for example, they will seek to commit suicide but will be unable to, because at that time they will be demonically possessed. In other words, it's very relevant, this 2 1s and a 9, in context of the mark of the Antichrist, because it's all about Revelation 9:11. Okay, and again, the massacre that's coming, the genocide, involves the mark of the Antichrist, like I've said. Furthermore, those that take it will die and have died, which is in itself a form of genocide. But it's not really a genocide because it's not one group specifically slaughtering another group. And I know there'll be those that'll be telling themselves, well, you know, there's the they. Well, there's some truth to that, but anyway. Trumpet had a controversial rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the midst of the PAN epidemic on June 20th, 2020. So this was the first political rally of the campaign. Trump finally said, you know, this is enough. I'm going to have a rally now on June 20th. And the left were going crazy because, you know, Biden couldn't do the same thing because he was a senile old man holed up in his basement, you know, in his office during that time. Okay, they didn't want to put him on the campaign trail for a good reason, and then they used the excuse to keep Trump off the campaign trail of this faux PAN epidemic. Okay. Anyway, so if you recall, it was very controversial at the time, this Tulsa rally. And at the time, I knew it was a prophetic sign, but I haven't known until now the purpose of it. It was just one of these signs that, you know, was put on the shelf. But now it's been taken off the shelf and put into the big picture of signs finally, because now we know how to include it into the big picture of signs. But it was recognized at the time that it was a prophetic sign, especially because at the time, a 4.2 earthquake struck northern Oklahoma, which is where the blacks lived, by the way, that were also near Tulsa. And Tulsa is in northeast Oklahoma. Okay, and this was felt by people entering the stadium for the rally in Tulsa. As they were entering the stadium to attend the trumpet rally, the earthquake struck. But it was a 4.2 magnitude earthquake, which is a sizable earthquake, which makes the news. But 4.2 hints at 42, which is the number in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the period of the Antichrist. In other words, this earthquake symbolized the period of the Antichrist. And it coincided with Trump's political rally in Tulsa. Again, what's coming is a politicide. Tulsa is known for a genocide. And it was a political rally, so that's why a politicide is being hinted at with Trump's political rally in Tulsa. Furthermore, as I'll talk about at the end here, there was the other political thing that happened, which wasn't a racist thing, it was a political thing. The Tulsa outrage, which was when the socialists were persecuted. Okay? Now, so, as I said, so this date of the rally was the 20th of the month, so it makes sense to see if there's a profound connection to the 20th when Obama, as in Oklahoma, will be returning to the White House as Michelle Obama's vice president, after which she will step down and he will become the president again. And so it's exactly 103 months. 103 is the 9 plus 9 plus 9th prime number. And God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. This may or may not be interesting, but the natives that went to Oklahoma were largely from Florida, the 9 plus 9 plus 9th state. But anyway, the number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. As from the Bible, it symbolizes God's judgment, and God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. So that's why this is relevant. And it pairs with this, because it's Oklahoma, which is the 4 times 4th triangular number state. So that's a pairing of 9 and 44. Okay? All right, now, as I wrote, if the purpose of this sign is to not add 103 months, then what is the purpose of this sign? Like I said, I never figured out how to fit this into the big picture until now. And so this must be the thing, and well, it makes sense, and it is the reason for this sign. It's for adding to the date that Obama becomes the president again, which gives us this 999 number, which, by the way, if you flip upside down, is 666, and God does this with his signs too. 3 9s hint at 666. It's astounding, right? In fact, yeah, that's even more amazing, really, than the pairing of that with the 4 times 4th triangular number state. The fact that it hints at 666 to the return of the Antichrist on January 20th, 2029. The death at the age of 111 hints at 1 plus 1 plus 1 days after November 24th. And as I mentioned earlier, it also hints at 1 plus 1 plus 1 days prior to November 24th, which was the death of one of the players on the select team. By the way, more is explained regarding that sign in another video. When the prediction comes to pass, the wise person will recognize that every minute of every video on this channel must be watched. Now, so 1 plus 1 plus 1 days after the death of the 111-year-old is November 27th, the date it is predicted that Simon will fall and injure his head. Now, he'll injure his head because that hints at the demonic possession that's coming through frequencies, which is what music is, because the 5G frequencies will trigger the transistors in people's brains inside their heads that will engender delta brainwaves, which will facilitate demonic possession. This is why the first lyric of Paul Simon's Graceland song is, "The Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar." Mississippi is the 9 plus 11th state, Revelation 9:11. Delta brainwaves is what will be used for demonic possession of people's heads, which is why Simon will injure his head, his brain. And shining The Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar because Simon famously dated Shelley Duvall, who he broke up with famously at the airport before she flew to the UK to film the movie The Shining, which is a movie about demonic possession. And in other words, in that movie, The Shining is a euphemism for demonic possession. So pretty much. I mean, you could, I'm not, you can debate me on that one. But anyway. So, so now Simon's predicted fall and injury will be 1,150 days to January 20th, 2029, the return of the Obamas. And that is astounding because the date on which Paul Simon had his prophetic dream was January 15th. That's what all this is pointing to. The Dreamland Theater is connecting with the Dream Team, but also Paul Simon through or because of his prophetic dream, in which Simon says a voice told him to make his recent album 7 Psalms and to title it 7 Psalms. 7 Psalms hints at the 7 trumpets of judgment in the book of Revelation after the sound of silence was heard in heaven. Paul Simon's first hit was Sound of Silence. One of those trumpet judgments is the demonic possession we're talking about, which includes Revelation 9:11. Now, these other numbers are prophetic too. Well, I'm not going to explain it though, because it's not really necessary. But they're from the Bible, okay? And so is this number of days, by the way, because in the Bible, in Daniel chapter 8, there is a period of 1,150 days in context of the Antichrist. So that's a double proof that this hints at Amos chapter 1, verses 15. Oh, so yeah, why? Well, Paul Simon's dream was on the date 115, but why is that? Because it hints at Amos chapter 1 that has 15 verses, in which is repeated the Hebrew idiom for 3 transgressions and for 4, which means the tolerable limit of transgressions has been exceeded, and now judgment and destruction are unavoidable. For 3 transgressions and for 4 is why Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel's first album was Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. Wednesday's the 4th day of the week. 3 a.m. in ancient Israel was the beginning of the 4th hour of the night watch. And that album was the first one after they were first signed by Wally Amos, who went on to found Famous Amos Cookies, the biggest cookie company in America, because it hints at the book of Amos, chapter 1 with its 15 verses. Revelation 9:11 hints at Paul Simon also because 9/11 is associated with Paul Simon, or rather the other way around. Paul Simon performed at the first broadcast, opened for it, following 9/11 of Saturday Night Live in Manhattan. His death will be the bookend of the warning that was 9/11 for America to repent and turn back to God. Paul Simon's song America is on his 4th album with Garfunkel. He performed 4 days after 9/11. And that America song on the 4th album is the album Bookends, because Paul Simon's death will be the symbolic bookend to the warning of judgment, which means the opportunity to repent has slidden away. Paul Simon's song from his 4th solo album. And America has exceeded its transgressions, and now judgment is unavoidable. That's what Paul Simon's death will symbolize. His death will be the result of his brain injury, and that's because people will become demonically possessed, which is symbolized by Revelation 9:11, through their brains. The 4th plane on 9/11 crashed at a 40-degree angle into a 40-acre pit, 40 plus 40 miles outside of Pittsburgh. And the Antichrist will dwell at 4 times 400 Pennsylvania Avenue, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Outside of it is where the plane crashed. The 44th president, 44 deaths, 4th plane to crash on 9/11. And that's because of the bridge, which is the 4th letter of the alphabet, because the bridge is the same symbol as the door in God's signs, and the door is a symbol of, in the alphabet, the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the demons will cross over the bridge, over the troubled water, as in bridge over troubled water, Simon's song, and then demonically possess people after they cross over from the demonic realm into the earthly realm. Now, so that's why the Dreamland Theater connects with the predicted fall of Paul Simon, who had his prophetic dream. Now, the news of his fall is predicted to be reported on Black Friday, the day after the 27th, on the 28th, because the 27th is Thanksgiving. So Black Friday is when we can expect to first hear the news of Paul Simon's fall. As I mentioned, Paul Simon's fall will be 1,150 days to the return of the Obamas to the White House. 1150 days is from Daniel chapter 8, which hints at Amos 1 with its 15 verses, and the date on which Simon has his prophetic dream, January 15th. The destruction of the Dreamland Theater points to Simon's dream, as I've explained. Okay. Now, Black Friday. Black Friday. What are we talking about? We were talking about Black Wall Street. And we were connecting Black Wall Street and the destruction of the Dreamland Theater to Paul Simon, who has a dream. And the news of Paul Simon will come on Black Friday. This is what I didn't mention in the paragraph, well, because it came to me right now. Now, wow, exclamation mark. The Tulsa massacre took place in the Black Wall Street area of Tulsa. November 24th, 2025 was exactly 1153, which again is the 191st prime number, months after Black Thursday on Wall Street on October 24th, 1929. That's amazing. And that's because November 24th is also, like I said earlier, 1153 days before the return of the first Black president on January 20th, 2029. So, from Black Thursday on Wall Street, we get the death of the survivor from Black Wall Street massacre with this number 153. And then in turn, we get this 1153 number again to the return of the Black president. And that's also hinted at with oldest, because like I said, God uses extremes or records. And firsts, for example, oldest. So the oldest from Black Wall Street connects to the first Black president with these two numbers, with the same number. 1153 months and then 1153 days from Black Thursday. Black Thursday connects to the Black president. And, well, that was the biggest stock market crash in history. And what's coming will be even bigger. The crash that's coming, much bigger. And the Black president will preside over it. Hence the Black Thursday connection. And what is the Great Depression known for? The soup lines, the rationing of food, which is what I said earlier Obama will be doing. This is so amazing. Now, Black Thursday is also 1190 months, which ends at 9/11, and 9 plus 9 plus 9 days to January 20th. So we have a direct connection there too. I don't really like this so much because it's not really a part of God's pattern to, use the months and then, it's not, you can take this or leave this. I prefer to leave this really because it's not even necessary, because this is how, the way it connects is Black Thursday connects with the Black Wall Street death, which then connects to the Black president. More confirmation again that the Black president will be leading in a politicide, a massacre, a genocide. But it's also now hinted at here that he'll preside over the biggest stock market crash of history and the rationing of food, because the Great Depression is known for the soup lions. The official death toll in the Tulsa race massacre was 36. And what I forgot to write here is that the age of the oldest survivor and the current last survivor is the 36th semi-prime number. But that was the official death toll also. In other words, God designed the death toll to confirm right now this prophetic sign. 100 years ago, he confirmed what was going to happen right now with this death at the 36th semi-prime number. And there was also 400 plus 400 hospitalized, which hints at the 44th president, Antichrist, who will lead a genocide massacre, a segregation massacre, like the race massacre. Okay? Now, to make it even more interesting, God has involved the Antichrist's birth date, August 4th. Get this. On August 4th, 1916, Tulsa passed an ordinance, and this is a quote, I'm quoting this from Wikipedia now. Tulsa passed an ordinance that mandated residential segregation by forbidding members of either race from residing on any block where 3/4 or more of the residents were members of the other race. Although the United States Supreme Court declared such an ordinance unconstitutional the following year, Tulsa and many other cities continued to establish and enforce segregation for the next 3 decades. But this law was passed on the Antichrist's birthday. If you didn't think that Obama was going to be involved in a segregation and genocide up until this point, perhaps now you are convinced. But I have more to say. It's not only that it's the coincidental Antichrist's birth date. Because 1916 hints at 16, right? When we abbreviate the year, we put an apostrophe and then the number, the last 2 digits, right? So we're in the year 25 right now, for example, right? 87, 88, 93, whatever, When we say the prophetic 93 World Series, you don't have to say 1993. It's 93, right? So anyway, it's 16, and that hints at 61. 16 hints at 61, right? And Obama was born on this date in 61. But also the date 8/4 hints at 84, which is the equivalent of the name Obama in Hebrew gematria. And the year 16 hints at 4 times 4, the 44th president. Now, this date was exactly 45 years before Obama's birth. 45 is the 9th triangular number. In a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 9th row is 45. That's a pairing of 9 and 44, the birth of the 44th president, 9th triangular number of years. This confirms the signs and connections. Okay, so it's a pairing of 9 and 44. Like I mentioned earlier, God pairs the numbers together to confirm the signs and connections because the 44th president was inaugurated in 09. 16 hints at 61. The Tulsa, Oklahoma law, as in Obama, right? As in 46, 4 times fourth triangular number of state, Oklahoma, Obama. The Tulsa, Oklahoma law regarding segregation hints at the coming segregation under Obama of those quote unquote, VACCI-ed or un-VACCI-ed, right? The riot was the result of media lies, which is a parallel with our time. So I read about this Tulsa riot, right? The massacre, the race riot. And it's all traced back to one particular newspaper that sensationalized what was actually happening, which led to everything. Disgusting, which is what the media is today. Truly, those in the media are going to hell. I'm talking about today, the mainstream media. I'm not talking about those with the Tulsa Tribune back in the day, although they may have to answer also. The Tulsa Tribune, owned, published, and edited by, I'm reading from Wikipedia, Richard Lloyd Jones, and one of the 2 white-owned papers that were published in Tulsa, broke the news that afternoon in that afternoon's edition with the headline, "Nab Negro for attacking girl in an elevator," which was the truth sensationalized, describing the alleged incident. Well, according to some witnesses, it wasn't the truth. According to some witnesses, the same edition of the Tribune included an editorial warning of a potential lynching of Rowland, titled, "To Lynch Negro Tonight." And if that were true, that really would have gotten the crowd going. The paper was known at the time to have a sensationalist style of news writing. Allegedly, all original copies of that issue of the paper have apparently been destroyed, and the relevant page is missing from the microfilm copy. So that's a little bit suspicious. Obviously, the reason why we can't get a copy is because those that were involved don't want that to happen because they really are guilty. The Tulsa Race Riot Commission in 1997 offered a reward for a copy of the editorial, which went unclaimed. A copy of the Tulsa Tribune of June 1st, 1921 was found. On the front page was an article headlined, "Nab Negro for attacking girl in an elevator." The editorial page was also found. It did not have an article headlined, "To Lynch a Negro Tonight." Okay, so probably may not exist. The editorial anyway. Other newspapers of the time, like the Black Dispatch and the Tulsa World, did not call attention to any such editorial after the event. So the exact content of the column and whether or not it existed at all remains in dispute. However, Chief of Detectives James Patton attributed the cause of the riots entirely to the newspaper account and stated, quote, "If the facts in the story had, as told the police, had only been printed, I do not think there would have been any riot whatsoever." Yeah. Okay, so anyway, the reason for this is prophetic, because it's all prophetic, right? As hopefully you've realized at this point. God's using all of this. And you would think that he would use the exact cause of the riot for prophecy. Well, the cause of the riot was the media. What is the cause of the coming genocide? It's the media. The lying, wicked left media. Which God's trumpet, Trump, has been calling out from day one. The fake abomination that is the mainstream left media today. The Tulsa outrage, from Wikipedia. Tulsa co-founder and Ku Klux Klan member W.T. Tate Brady participated in the riot as a night watchman. This land press reported that previously Brady led the Tulsa outrage, tarring and feathering of members of the industrial workers of the world. An incident understood to be economically and politically rather than racially motivated. The Tulsa outrage is exactly 111 years before it is predicted that Michelle and Barack Obama will be elected, whether it's shoplifted or not, on November 7th, 2028. The oldest survivor of the Tulsa race massacre died at 111 years old. I believe that's a connection. I believe the 111 years old number here, connected with the Tulsa race massacre, also confirms this 111 years exactly from the Tulsa outrage. Again, it's in Oklahoma, which hints at Obama, 4 times 4th triangular number state. Okay, so I think we've made it all clear here, and I think we're pretty much done with this video here. All right, so the way I record this is I record it in some segments, and I haven't put the introduction or the ending to the video onto this video yet, but the video is complete. The information that won't be anything other than a clip for the beginning and ending that I've already made that I put in other videos. The information specific to this video is finished, and I just put the last segment in. Like I just said a minute ago, this video is done, and it is 1 hour and 11 minutes, which is amazing. Which is interesting. It's just a personal sign. I don't take this. I do not say that this is a prophetic sign. I do not do that as a habit in these videos, and that's why I'm saying it right now. I take that with a grain of salt. It's just for personal interest's sake. All right, the best you could say is for last here. More has been discovered here. And there was a series on HBO titled Watchmen. This name in itself is extremely prophetic because this is what this video is. We are watchmen who are watching the Lord's prophetic signs. The watchmen in the Bible. So there's a series titled Watchmen, and the opening scene of the series chronicles the destruction of the Dreamland Theater in the Tulsa race massacre. So, like I was saying, this Dreamland Theater is important in American history. It's a big part of American history, this Dreamland Theater, the iconic location that was destroyed in the riot on Black Wall Street. So the first episode aired on October 20th, 2019, exactly 111 months before the return of the first black president on January 20th, 2029. And I forgot to mention how this president has been the biggest instigator of racial tensions in America since who knows when. But that's textbook communist strategy, right? And Barack Obama is a communist. By the way, that's also what the Tulsa outrage hints at. Forgot to mention that. Very important. This is all about Obama, as we know, right? That's what I've been explaining this whole time, this whole video. Oklahoma, Obama. The Tulsa outrage, which was this persecution of socialists, hints at Obama, the socialist, the communist. And that's not speculation. That's not an opinion. It's a fact. Barack Obama got his start in politics in the living room of Bill Ayers, the founder of the Weather Underground, and which an offshoot was the May 19th Communist Organization, which Barack Obama was a member of, which bombed the Capitol building. They bombed the Capitol building on November 7th, 1983. And that was 15 days after the barrack bombings in Beirut. The barrack bombings hint at Barack Obama. Which is why also we know that the May 19th Communist Organization that bombed the Capitol building included in membership Barack Obama. 15 days is the equivalent of 21,600 minutes, which ends at 216. Barack Obama was born on the 216th day of the calendar year, and the name Barack is equal to 216 in English gematria. 216 is 6 times 6 times 6. And so from the barrack bombings, we get the name Barack. And the name Barack is equal to 216. And we have the 216 period of time connection, 21,600 minutes, to the bombing of the Capitol building by the May 19th Communist Organization, of which Barack Obama was a member, which is how he knows Bill Ayers, who, by the way, wrote his autobiography. And that's not controversial. Bill Ayers has said so, and it's on video. You can see that. Just look for it. The Dreams from My Father book. It was all a plan, a lie, concocted by these communists. For Barack, the reason why it was a lie is because it was all about his supposed family in Kenya, which wasn't his real family. But he was born in Kenya. But I'm not going to explain that again. I've explained it before. So anyway, the point is that Barack Obama was a communist. And like I said before, the purpose of this video is to prove the controversial things that I am saying. Case closed. No debate at all when the prediction comes to pass. I don't care if you think that's silly. You do not know. You're ignorant. Okay? And it's proven through God's big picture of signs, which will be proven to be true when the prediction comes to pass. That's the purpose of the prediction. So, fact. Barack Obama was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization when he was younger. And once a communist, always a communist. And by the way, that organization broke up, disbanded in 85, which is when he coincidentally moved to Chicago to pursue street activism, to follow in his father's footsteps, Frank Marshall Davis, who was the communist from Chicago who moved to Hawaii to head the communist chapter in Hawaii, which Barack Obama's grandfather was assigned by the CAA to monitor, which is how Barack Obama's mother and Frank Marshall Davis's paths crossed each other when she was 18 and he seduced her and knocked her up. Ironically, had abortions been legalized, and they were first legalized in Hawaii, coincidentally, because it's prophecy, Barack Obama would never have been born. And to get around the fact that, to avoid getting fired by the CIA regarding this scandal, Barack Obama's grandfather devised the scheme to get Obama Sr. involved, who was a Kenyan in Hawaii studying as part of the CIA program to fight communism in Kenya. And the agreement was made by Obama Sr. so that it would enable him to pursue his doctorate and stay in the States, which is why we know that Obama Sr. and Obama's mother never spent any time together because they weren't really married. But for good measure, to fool immigration, they decided it would be smart to have the child born in Kenya, which was really smart. And Obama was born in Kenya. Anyway, Obama did have a relationship in his adolescence with Frank Marshall Davis, who taught him his politics. All right? And then Obama went to New York, and at Columbia, he met Bill Ayers. They pursued politics in Chicago, and the plan was to make the smart-sounding black guy the first president. But to do that, they knew that an African-American would not be able to do it. So they played on the fact that Obama is from Kenya, an immigrant. which is a farce because he was raised by a white family, his grandmother, and anyway. That's the story there. You can watch the documentary, The Real Dreams from My Father, which will explain everything except for how he was actually born in Kenya. Now, back to what I was saying here. This is truly astounding because, again, the lady died at the age of 111. She is the oldest survivor when the Dreamland Theater was destroyed. And then this opening scene of The Watchmen chronicles the destruction of this theater, and it aired exactly 111 months before the predicted return of the first black president, who will preside over a massacre, a genocide, and segregation, and everything that I've said. Now, and yet, just to again conclude, the reason for the Tulsa outrage connection is, which is again, what was the connection here? It's exactly 111 years to the date that the Obamas will either win or have the election shoplifted. Okay? Because Obama is a communist. That's what the Tulsa outrage was about. Okay? And by the way, once a communist, always a communist. So that's inside him, and when the crisis comes, his communist side will reemerge. I mean, he is a communist. He did so many things seditiously within the government during his time. Okay, that's what communists are, seditionists. Now, and God is using this because it's judgment on America. It's the destruction of America, and he's using the Antichrist to destroy America. Okay? For those who have been asleep and liked this guy and voted for him, wake up. The Obamas will return to the White House as a result of the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. Okay, that's predicted to occur on August 2nd, 2028, incidentally. She will be the running mate of Gavin Newsom. They'll both die on the same plane. And then in an emergency, 3 months before the election, the Obamas will be appointed the Democrat Party leaders. Now, Harris was born on the date October 20th, 1964, exactly 11 times 5 years before The Watchmen aired. Simon's Dream was on the date 115, which again points to Amos 1 with its 15 verses, with its repeating Hebrew idiom for 3 transgressions and for 4, which means the tolerable limit of transgressions for America has been exceeded, and now judgment and destruction are unavoidable. And that's why we have this 11 times 5 years connection here. And her plane crash will occur next to the I-55 highway. 11 times 5 is 55. Just another personal sign. That segment that I just recorded regarding this bit about the date, October 20th, was 10 minutes and 20 seconds long. And I didn't intend to do that. All right, there's something else that occurred that's relevant, which is typical for God's signs, relevant and occurred on the same date, on this November 24th date, this date that the mayor of Tulsa announced the death of the oldest survivor of the Tulsa race massacre. We have the reunion show, and I just mentioned the show Watchmen and how it connects, because it depicts at the beginning of the series the destruction of the Dreamland Theater. Well, we have this ultra famous show, Everybody Loves Raymond. I never watched it, so I'm going to read what my friend wrote here. And but I did know this. Even though I didn't watch it, it was back in the day when there was a collective culture. There's no such thing anymore because of the fracturing of media. But back in the day, there were TV shows that everyone at least knew about, whether they liked it or watched it or whatever. So obviously, because of the shared culture that we once had, I know of the show Everybody Loves Raymond. And I know that one of the things about the show, even though I never watched it, was its portrayal of the woman wearing the pants in the house. the woman being the dominant one in the relationship. And it used this to get its popularity. This is the reason why it was so popular. Because it was portraying Raymond as this weak, non-masculine guy in a relationship with the dominant woman. And that was the ideal that the feminists and well, not just feminists, but the women wanted. They loved this. It was eaten up. The culture loved it. And you could argue, and I would say prophetically, this is the symbol of this type of relationship, which is an abomination. The independence of women from men is rooted or related to the same sin as the original sin, the first sin of independence from God. And God created the natural hierarchy, and things like this show are a rebellion against God, essentially. So that's what this is about. So this show, now I'll prove it to you. It's Antichrist. Because the last show, God uses firsts and lasts for signs, etc. The final episode of this long-running, massively popular show was April 16th, 2005, exactly 44 months and 4 days after 9/11, when the fourth plane crashed and killed 44 people, when it crashed at a 40-degree angle into a 40-acre pit, 40 plus 40 miles outside of Pittsburgh. And why is that? Because Revelation 9:11 speaks of the demons rising from the bottomless pit. Okay? Now, in turn, the last episode wasn't only 44, and God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. It wasn't only 44 months and 4 days after 9/11, when the fourth plane crashed and killed 44 people. But it's also, this last episode is also 44 months and 4 days before Obama became the 44th president. Yeah. And how will Obama become the president again? Through his wife, who at the time will be dominant, as she will be the president and he will be the vice president. This is classic Everybody Loves Raymond. The woman, the wife, was the president, and Raymond was the vice president. This is huge, right? From 9/11, we have a connection to Obama's presidency. This wasn't known before, but this is the connection. 9/11 connects with the fourth plane that killed 44 people with 40 months and 4 days, and then another 44 months and 4 days to the inauguration of the 44th president. That's amazing beyond words. And it's Everybody Loves Raymond. It's like Everybody Loves Obama, the Antichrist. Yeah, wow. So, okay. Now, this whole connection is also exactly 192 weeks. And Obama equals 192 in English gematria. Yeah, 44 months and 4 days is the equivalent of 192 weeks. Okay. Now, we already said this date. Now, this reunion of the Everybody Loves Raymond, I just explained how Everybody Loves Raymond connects to 9/11. Well, this date of the reunion show connects with the 191st prime number, to the return of the Obamas, which is an Everybody Loves Raymond alignment style, where Michelle will be the president and he will be the vice president, just like the show. Okay? Now, the thing is, during the show, the reunion show, they paid tribute to the actor Sawyer Sweeten, who played one of the children in the show, who died of suicide at the age of 19. The letter S is the 19th letter. That's SS, 1919. It hints at 9/11. But he died on April 23rd, 2015. Okay? That's amazing because his suicide on April 23rd, 2015 was 61 months exactly after Obamacare. 61 is the 6 plus 6 plus 6th prime number. Obamacare symbolizes nationalized health care and the enforcement of the mark of the Antichrist, which is sold to people as a medical product, which it isn't. And again, that's leading to demonic possession, which will have people commit suicide, which, as Bible prophecy says, these people will attempt suicide but will not be able to. So this is a suicide, and it connects to Obamacare, and which is about the mark, which will cause people to want to commit suicide but not be able to. Well, this is amazing because the two antichrists met in the White House garden at the White House exactly 5 months after the suicide. And in this prophecy, it says that the people will be attempting to commit suicide but not be able to for 5 months. Wow. And also, the demonic possession will be triggered by 5G frequencies. And it's the 5th trumpet in the 7 trumpets. Oh, the actor that was highlighted in the reunion special and committed suicide on 9/11 when the 4th plane went and killed 44 people in the pit 40 plus 40 miles outside of Pittsburgh, as in the pit from which the demons will rise from the demonic realm. He was a twin. And so I think what my friend is saying here is that his twin also acted in the show. But regardless, he's a twin, which hints at the Twin Towers and 9/11. And again, I just explained how this show connects with 9/11, with 44 months and 4 days. It's interesting that Michelle and Barack Obama were born exactly 128 weeks apart. And that's because of G128 in the Greek concordance, which is the word for the Ethiopian. And Barack Obama was born in southwest Kenya near Ethiopia. That's why. That's a fact. I'm not going to explain it anymore. Now, they were born 128 weeks apart, and this suicide of the guy from the famous show here was exactly 128 weeks before trumpet, God's trumpet for trumpeting prophetic signs, said to the media cryptically, "This is the calm before the storm." And that connects into the big picture, which I'm sure if I took the time could connect it to November 24th, 2025 in the reunion show. But I do know this, it does connect to the prediction for Paul Simon, which is again 1 + 1 + 1 days after the reunion show and the death of the survivor of the Tulsa race massacre at the age of 111. So that's enough. This is all amazing. We even have the two antichrists identified. By the way, if you're wondering how Pope Francis could be the antichrist, that's because he will be resurrected from the grave through the power of the demons on April 26th, 2029, shortly after the Obamas return to the White House. All right, a friend of mine brought something to my attention, which is truly amazing. So the Lord is using Chicago in his big picture of prophetic signs in general to point to Barack Obama, the president from Chicago. Well, his home in Chicago is prophetic, and we would expect it to be. And I've never looked into it before and wouldn't have known before anyway what the significance of his home's location is until now. But Obama's home in Chicago is on the corner of Greenwood Avenue and 50th Street. As in the massacre in Greenwood District in Tulsa, and Obama will become the 50th president. That's the prediction. This has been known for a long time. This wasn't just discovered today with this 50th Street. The 50th Street confirms what was already known, which is that Trump will die in office, Vance will become the 48th president, Michelle Obama will become the 49th president, and then she will be replaced by her vice president, Barack Obama, the 50th president. She will step down. And this is relevant too because we are talking about their home, both of their home. Michelle Obama is also from Chicago. So it's amazing though. Look what God has done here. He's placed Obama, the home of his prophetic home in Chicago, the prophetic city for Barack Obama, on Greenwood Avenue. And this video has been discussing the prophetic significance of the Tulsa Race massacre in the Greenwood District, Black Wall Street. And the corner of his home is 50th Street and Greenwood. I'll just show you a map now. So as you can see here, this is the location of his home. This South Greenwood Avenue here is a dead end. So he lives at the end of the street. All right? And people cannot go beyond this corner. The Secret Service will stop people at this corner. They cannot go any further down South Greenwood Avenue. So the corner essentially of Obama's house is 50th Street and South Greenwood Avenue. I'll show you a picture of the street sign. So a friend of mine is from Tulsa, and that's why she took this picture here and then let me know about this after I sent her the email regarding these discoveries regarding the Tulsa Race massacre. So in other words, the Lord even designed it that she's in my small group of people that I communicate to about these things. So it's a coincidence, but it isn't a coincidence because she has led me to the fact that, and she would know because she's from Tulsa. And it would require really someone from Tulsa to recognize the significance of the Greenwood Avenue street that Obama's house is on in Chicago. And so I guess when she visited Chicago, she went to this corner and took this picture. And she said that she couldn't go beyond this location because of the Secret Service. So I guess tourists, if they want to investigate Barack Obama, they go to this street corner and that's about it. But it's Greenwood Avenue. It's amazing. And it's 50th Street because he's the 50th president, which, by the way, is why also he's from the 50th state and why there are 50 states, because there will be 50 presidents. The 50th state was the last state that completed the union in God's prophetic manifest destiny, and the last president before the destruction of America is the 50th president. That's why. That's why Obama is from the 50th state. And this was known before it was learned that his home is on the corner of 50th Street. Oh, and you know what? Street hints at state. It's almost state. Street, state. It's basically a rhyming word. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, this is clearly from God here. God has, in other words, communicated with this location that Obama, the 50th president, will preside over a massacre, a genocide, as has been explained in this video. Okay, thousands of this is from Wikipedia, regarding the Tulsa Race massacre, thousands of black residents had fled the city. Another 4,000 people were rounded up and detained at various centers. Under martial law, the detainees were required to carry identification cards. As many as 6,000 Greenwood residents were interned at 3 local facilities: Convention Hall, now known as Tulsa Theater, the Tulsa County Fairgrounds, which was then located about a mile northeast of Greenwood, and the McNulty Park, a baseball stadium. Now, incidentally, this is just one example of countless of how God has designed my life to coincide with the prophetic signs. Because there was a long period of my life where I would go to the Tulsa County Fairgrounds every year, every September or October. Yeah, October. No, either late September or early October, I forget. But I, for many years, had a business at the Tulsa County Fair. So I had a traveling business, and that was one of my annual stops. And so I know Tulsa, and I know the county fairgrounds, although the county fairgrounds that I went to, as it says here, is not the same, but nonetheless. And so what I've been saying in this video is that the rounding up of the illegal aliens is laying down the groundwork, the infrastructure, for the coming rounding up of the political dissidents of the blue team, led by Barack Obama. Okay? And that's what's contained in this prophetic sign. This Tulsa race massacre is a prophetic sign designed to hint at what is coming. And this is only being explained on this channel. And what I'm saying will be proven to be true when the prediction for Paul Simon's fall comes to pass. Now, because of the additional information here, I've had to I'm going to repost the video here a 3rd time. I've already posted it twice and taken it down twice in order to edit it, because more information keeps coming, and the sign only occurred 1 + 1 + 1 days before the 27th, as I explained. And anyway, it's still before the 27th, so nonetheless, never mind. It still works as a prediction. Besides that, I have countless other videos that were posted long time before this video, which also predict the fall of Paul Simon on the 27th. And so that's proof, if you care to not believe this video being a prediction and somehow me being able to manipulate the post dates to post date the video 2 days prior to a date. Okay, it's ridiculous. I don't know anyone on the inside of YouTube, furthermore, that would be able to do that, if that were even possible by someone on the inside of YouTube. But more than that, I have posted this video on multiple social media platforms, not just one particular platform that you could hypothetically say I have an inside source that can somehow manually, whatever. Anyway, so there's a lot here, because again, the detainees, the rounding up is what's coming, right? Of the left's true enemies, the true conservatives and true Christians. Okay, and it'll be under the premise of security, in emergency, a crisis. They will be deemed to be domestic terrorists, as they as the left is already calling those on the right domestic terrorists. So that will be what will be part of it, but it'll also include those who refuse to take the mark, and so they're not worthy citizens, and they're not interested in the so-called greater public health, and so they need to be isolated, like they were doing, for example, in Australia, and and also in a way isolating people in their homes in North America. Okay, But they were rounding up people in Australia and taking them off to internment camps. I mean, Australia is one of the sickest countries in the world. One of the most mentally ill, socially sick, perverted, evil countries in the world, Australia. Canada would be in the same league. The UK, it's not a coincidence that the sickest countries in the world today are the ones that were the most blessed countries. Because the judgment is primarily for those countries that God blessed. I mean, the judgment, in general, this is a principle of God's judgment, whether it be an individual's or nation's, is commensurate with the amount of light and blessing that was received. And so God is focused on destroying currently his Gentile nations, the Anglosphere nations primarily, but first and foremost, America. But America is unique in that there are still Christians and there are red states. So, but anyway, there's a precedent for this already happening in the West, Australia. Anyway, people will be required to have identification cards on them. That's what was happening during this martial law in Tulsa. This ID will be digital, and like I said, it'll be also part of the enforcement of the mark of the Antichrist through the digital currency that will be used by people carrying their digital identifications. And that, again, will be used, the programmed currency will be used to restrict people from buying and selling food freely, unless they have taken the mark of the Antichrist, because the food will be rationed, and the rationale for who gets the limited food will be the worthy citizens who are part of the collective, the socialists, the left. They're the better ones. They're the moral ones, right? They view conservatism by definition to be immoral. That's why they are on the left, because they've been brainwashed throughout their entire lives to believe that left of center equates to being moral and right of center equates to being selfish and evil. But in fact, it's the other way around. That's the truth. Why do people become wiser? No, as people get older and more wise, why is it a fact that in general people become more conservative? I mean, that's a fact, right? If you ask people whether they believe that at the age of 60 they were more wise at 50, and at 50 were they more wise at 40, etc., they will mostly say that that's true. But it's also a statistical fact that people get more conservative as they get older because they get more wise. And it is complete evil propaganda to say that conservatives aren't interested in morality. In fact, that's what makes them conservative, is morality. And no, the left does not have a monopoly on morality like they think they do. In fact, the truth is that although they're naive, they are the immoral ones. Okay? Now, so these centers that people were rounded up into, interned in, are symbolic of what's coming and what's happening. Like I'm saying, the infrastructure is being laid out right now. It's just beginning though, because like I said earlier, it's going to get more extreme when the economy tanks, and people will be much more interested in rounding up the illegals then who are taking their jobs. And furthermore, taking the rationed food, although I don't know that the rationing of food will occur prior to Obama's presidency. I don't know about that. I don't think so, actually. But whatever. The rounding up is going to intensify because there are many millions of illegals taking up jobs that otherwise could be done by Americans. And that's not going to be tolerated once the economy tanks. And so there's going to be an increase in these internment camps and the expulsion of these illegals. And that's just laying the groundwork, the infrastructure, the capacity for when the time comes for the rounding up of true conservatives and true Christians, the political dissidents. Okay, so it's amazing. Now, this 6,000 Greenwood residents is interesting because between the 40th president and the 50th president, which is hinted at with Greenwood Avenue and 50th Street, it's 6 presidencies, right? 44 plus 6 equals 50. Now, so this hints at the coming internment of political dissidents during the 50th presidency of Barack Obama. Obama's residence is on Greenwood Avenue. 6,000 interned residents from Greenwood District hints at the 44th presidency plus 6 equals the 50th presidency and 50th Street, the corner of Greenwood Avenue. 6,000 equals 2 times 3,000, which hints at Obama's basketball jersey number. The basketball president wore number 23, and he installed a basketball court at his White House residence, which brings us back to the residence of Greenwood District and Obama's residence on Greenwood Avenue. And by the way, the basketball court was installed in the garden. I'm pretty sure. Or that area, I'm pretty sure. So that would be another green. It's definitely in the backyard where the grass is green anyway. The requirement to carry identification cards hints at the coming ID requirements to be able to buy and sell the rationed food, as well as the ID requirements to be able to travel, etc., participate in society, just like during the evil CVD disease days when the political dissidents, because truthfully it was a political war, it was a manifestation of the culture war, and MASKs and the VACCINE were used as political weapons to persecute their enemies, and that's the truth. Whether those that did so were conscious of it or not is besides the point. What I've said is a fact, and it's part of the political cult. And people in a cult don't know they're in a cult and at war with the others that aren't in the cult. That's the nature of a cult. It's separate. It's people who separate themselves because they think they are better than the others. And if they have their way, they will enact laws that make it difficult for others. That's what cults do. And it was a cult. It was religious in nature. The political left went insane, and as Chesterton said, when one stops believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything. And what has replaced God for the left is their politics and the state. That's why they are obsessed with politics, the left. And furthering their religion, their religious idealisms through their politics, because they have a religious fervor about their beliefs. For example, a good one is climate change. That's a religion. It's not based in any facts. It's not based in so-called science at all. but the propaganda, you wouldn't know that because of the propaganda. But anyway, and that's because their religion has man as being inherently sinful, and those that don't go along with their ideology are also sinners and need to be excommunicated from the church or society. They're the denialists, right? It's a dirty word. Climate deniers. They're like dirty people, etc. It's a religion. Anyway, so that's my point. And so what's going to happen in the future here is there'll be further excommunication of the heretics, and they won't be able to, like during the CVD disease days, which was a religion. It was Covidian is the word for it. It's the name of the religion. A lot of people call it the Covidians, the Covidian religion, as in the Branch Davidians, because that's what it is, a cult. If you don't know what I mean by the Branch Davidians, well, it was a cult in California. And, and so they excommunicated people from society that weren't part of the cult, and they weren't allowed to go to the movies or the gym or a lot of other things, right? And that's what's going to happen, and that'll be enforced through digital ID. But they won't even be able to travel. Or maybe they'll be able to leave their home during a specific time to go to the store, but maybe not, because they won't be able to buy and sell food at some point. Okay? And so, yeah. So that's why, anyway, we have this foreshadow of this with the requirement to carry identification cards in the Tulsa race massacre. Okay, because what's coming is there'll be restrictions on people. They'll be required to have this digital ID to do anything, and it will restrict their political dissidents, the left's political dissidents, those that don't go along with the propaganda. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.